I didn't know anything about real estate when I first got started, other than I knew it could get me out of my full-time job. I bought a single-family home for $30,000 and put about $30,000 into it and sold it for $120,000. So before taxes, I made $60,000. I literally thought I was the richest person in the world.
Being from that small town, I feel like sometimes if you're an outsider, it's a little bit harder to get started.
So having grown up there and known in the community makes sourcing deals easier. And a lot of people don't know that how much value there is in rural investing. Even if it is smaller, that can be such a valuable place to start investing.
How you implement systems to help you as a self-managing landlord?
I think everyone has a mom and pop mindset around being a landlord. They don't realize there's a really good way to be a self-managing landlord that requires really low level of time invested.
All right, welcome to episode 39 of the Agent to Investor podcast, where we talk about the agent side of real estate investing. We'll be talking about the successes, the failures, and all in between. My name is Nico Garcia. I'm a local real estate agent and investor based out of Montgomery County, Maryland. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host,
Anna by Northern Virginia realtor and mostly out-of-state investor. And today we have a special guest with us. If you are at all a BRRRR fan, you know who this is. You may have picked up her book, her and her partner Grace's book, Business Partner. I feel like I need to clarify that for some reason.
I know, I'm like, carry on.
I was like, let me clarify that because, some people have it wrong.
We do get that question often, surprisingly.
business partner.
Business partner, self-managing landlord. We have Amelia McGee. My best friend growing up's last name was McGee. Maybe you guys are related. Anyways, not the point, but we have you on here and we're excited to talk about your journey into investing, the community, all the good stuff.
Yeah,
so,
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. For those who don't know you, Amelia, do you mind giving a quick introduction and background of where you're from and, what got you to where you are here?
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me on. I am based out of Des Moines, Iowa. I live and invest within this area, and I've been investing since 2019, which seems crazy because that was 6 years ago. I can't believe it's already 2025. I own about 40 doors, and they're a mixture of midterm, long-term, and short-term rentals. And I really enjoy purchasing small multifamily. That's kind of my niche. I'm actually working on selling all of my single families. But I'm also the co-founder of WIRE, which is Women Invest in Real Estate. We do tons of amazing things for women investors and is actually a part of our WIRE community. And we love having her. So if you haven't heard of WIRE, make sure you check us out. And like Anna said, I've also co-authored the book, The Self-Managing Landlord for Bigger Pockets.
Awesome.
Yes.
So many avenues we can go, Amelia. But, before you got into real estate, what did you know and what did you do for work?
Yeah, so I didn't know anything about real estate when I first got started, other than I knew it could be a great avenue to get me out of my full-time job. I was always someone that knew I didn't want to work for someone else for the rest of my life. I very much have an independent personality, and I say I make a terrible employee.
Sure.
So I was working as a project manager. I was really big into the FI community, financial independence, budgeting, paying off debt. And I feel like there's a big correlation between personal finance and real estate. So somehow I stumbled across Bigger Pockets and real estate investing and thought, man, if I can flip one property a year and make 20, 30,000 off of each property, that adds a lot to my yearly income. That would be awesome. And maybe then I can scale that and do that full time. So took a leap of faith, bought a really cheap property here in Iowa. And that's kind of how it all started, but had no investing experience prior to that first flip.
So how did you get into the financial independence thing? Was that something your parents had turned you on to, a friend? You just were one of those people that woke up one day and be like, I want to be different?
Yeah, I feel like as a child, I was the kid that was constantly counting their piggy bank money. I always was finding ways to make money, lemonade stands. I would make things in my Easy Bake Oven and sell them to my siblings. I would make bookmarks and sell them to my classmates. I just always had an entrepreneurial spirit. And my parents at some point, I think, did the Dave Ramsey program, kind of half-assed did the Dave Ramsey program. And I knew that background. And then in college, I started thinking about it more. And I don't know, I just always knew like I didn't want to be chained to debt. I wanted to be able to live a life of financial freedom, to do whatever I wanted. So I don't know, it's just kind of the way I was raised / me just being a little bit of a control freak with my money. So that's how it started.
I had to ask because I have kids and I did not figure this out until I was like in my 40s. And so I am envious and also proud of the fact that you were like had this mindset so early on, because by the time you hit my age, you're going to be like so far ahead of the game. It's going to be like crazy.
I'm not that far behind you in age, I don't think.
You'd be
I'm
surprised.
older than Grace.
Well, I was born in the 80s.
Okay. Well,
Like 80.
I was born in 91. I'm 33. We're not that far apart.
Okay. Like I was going to say I was born like I say 80s, but really it's 80, like with a 0 at the end. Like
That's funny. But Amelia, I could totally relate to having like a entrepreneurial, spirit. When I was young, I did the selling candy in high school, and my dad is an entrepreneur. He owns his own contracting business, so he was always, giving me self-development books and things that would, help me grow as an individual. So I can totally relate. But growing up, like in Des Moines, you mind sharing like a little bit about? I've never been there. I've only heard of it through you and reading your book. But how is the market in terms of real estate over there? I know you mentioned you bought a cheap home. That can mean two different things from where Anna and I are to where you are. But how does the market look, and how did you get started initially?
So I actually started in my hometown, which is not Des Moines. It's an hour south of Des Moines, and it's a very small town. I live in Des Moines now and invest here, but I started there.
Okay.
And it's a town of 5,000 people. So when I say it's a small town, I literally mean it. But I bought a single family home for $30,000. It was a 4-bed, 2-bath. And put about $30,000 into it and sold it for $120,000. So before taxes, I made $60,000. I literally thought I was the richest person in the world. Like, that's a ton of money. That's 100% return on the $60,000 that I had invested. And I know those numbers seem crazy to people that live in really high cost of living areas, but my risk is also so low doing those projects. Like, some people are flipping $800,000 homes and they're putting $300,000 into them and selling them for 1.5. That's way riskier than a $60,000 flip. So, my cash on cash return was 100%, which I'm happy with. So yeah, that's where I got started. Kept buying in that small town, and then eventually moved to Des Moines once I was like, I feel like I need to diversify a little bit here. So back to the Des Moines question. Des Moines is the biggest city in Iowa, although it's still very small compared to a lot of big cities. It's got a really strong rental market, a really strong employment base. People love raising families here. It's got a low cost of living. We're pretty shielded from the ups and downs of the economy. So I also enjoyed that. And I think it's definitely a growing city. It's always on the list of, top 10 cities that are growing in the US or best places to raise a family. So love all those aspects about Des Moines and plan on continuing to invest here.
So you mentioned, your first property or your first project was a fix and flip. And, I know you mentioned you didn't know too much about real estate. Did you have a mentor, or how did that work when you were doing that?
I didn't have a mentor. I think that's probably the biggest thing that stunted my investing journey, even though I was still able to scale pretty rapidly, is I thought that why would anyone find value in mentoring me? Because what value could I provide back to them? So I just never reached out. I was kind of just a silent watcher on Instagram. I followed lots of investors. I was constantly on the BRRRR forums reading. The forums 6 years ago used to be so good. They've changed the format of those, and now I don't find as much value. But anytime I would ever have a question, I'd just Google it. And the first thing that probably popped up was the BRRRR forum. So just used Google and what resources I had at hand and was self-taught. I think that for real estate investing, it's not rocket science. in my opinion, like there's so many resources out there. It's absolutely one of those things that's figure outable if you're willing to put in the work.
Okay. I'm curious because Brian and I are investing in a small town now. Did you find it easier to find, I'll say, properties, get through like permitting paperwork, like being from that small town? I feel like sometimes you get into this, like if you're an outsider, it's a little bit harder to get started. Did you see any of that? Did you find it helpful being from the town to help get you started?
100%. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. People from smaller towns, especially, have a mentality of you're an outsider. You don't belong here. Why should I work with you? I don't trust you. I don't know you. So, having grown up there and my family grew up, like my parents also grew up there, we're known in the community, which makes sourcing deals easier. And I think a lot of people don't know that how much value there is in rural investing. Like they think I need to go to all these big markets, but if you have a competitive advantage in a market that you already know and people there, even if it is smaller, that can be such a valuable place to start investing and get your feet wet. So yes, absolutely a huge competitive advantage by investing there.
Now, how did that change when you went to Des Moines? Like, was it like a shock or was it very similar because you're from the state at least?
Yeah. So that was a little bit trickier in the way that like I don't feel like the deals come to me as easily here in Des Moines. However, I've made some really good connections with an agent, and that agent knows that I'm a closer. So anytime he finds a deal that's he knows fits my buy box, I'm one of the first people that he comes to. So I've purchased an 11 unit, a 5 unit, and a duplex from him, which is awesome. So like it really I feel like people think they need to build these huge teams or they need to have all these players in a market to make it work. And honestly, if you can find a really good agent or a really good boots on the ground, that's enough to go a long ways for a while.
All right, we got to peel that back a little bit. We're the Agent to Investor podcast, and we're always curious to hear about the investor side. What is it that you were looking for when you were looking for an agent, and how have they helped you scale your business?
It was actually luck of the draw. So for me, I used the agent that was the listing agent on the first property that I purchased, the 11plex here in Des Moines. So it was just kind of like I stumbled across him. And for me, I'm very like, whatever's the easiest way. I don't like there to be a lot of middlemen. I was like, I'll just work directly with this agent. And I closed the deal. And then he continues to send me deals. He's really good about following up with me and checking in. Yeah, enough that it's annoying to me because I don't like texting and he used to try to call me all the time and I would never answer. So he's learned not to do that. But he's consistent. He moves deals along quickly. I think he's experienced. He's been in the business for probably 20 years. So for me, that's really appealing because I've got so much other stuff going on. I don't want to have to be the babysitter of every transaction that we're closing together, which can be the case with some agents that are maybe newer or don't understand investing or just don't have as much experience.
Like we talk about this all the time. Every agent's going to say they're investor friendly, but is there any like specific things that you're looking for an agent to say, okay, they actually know what they're talking about?
Yeah. If they have investment properties themselves, that's huge. Mm-hmm. If they understand what's going to make a good deal for me, don't send me a piece of shit that doesn't cash flow. If you can't even run the basics of here's what this property costs, here's the mortgage, interest, taxes, and some maintenance. And if it doesn't cash flow after that, like if you can't get that basics down, that's a waste of my time. So honestly, those are the two. And then like 3 is just being able to close a transaction, being able to move a transaction along and help problem solve if there are bumps along the way, which is hard to know just interviewing an agent. But like if you can learn that throughout the transaction, that's super helpful.
Pro tips to all the agents, one, follow up consistency, but at a point to how the investor likes to be communicated, not calling and texting, making sure you understand how they like to be communicated with, and experience understanding what a deal is and what isn't a deal. So if you're an agent listening to this, this is coming straight from the investor's mouth, what they're looking for in agents.
Mhm. And one other thing that I will say, like, for me, I'm so bad at texting, and my agent will text me like 7 times in a row before I'll finally respond. But don't give up on it.
Yeah.
You really have to understand your client's
Yeah.
communication style, because like he'll text me deals and like if it's not the right fit for me, I just won't respond. And that's like I just I don't know if it's my ADHD, but like if I respond, that means I'm interested.
Yeah.
If I don't take offense to it, it obviously just means I'm not interested.
So Amelia, going back, a big hurdle that a lot of people have is getting from like 0 to 1 and that limited belief and things like that. I'm curious to how you funded your first deal. And I know there's so many different ways and it's probably changed since, but when you initially bought your property, how did you fund that deal?
Yeah. I think that's a really great point. I was actually just talking to Grace about this last week, how we feel that doors 1, 2, 3 are the hardest because it's so hard to get over that fear of like jumping in and doing the thing. Then number 2, you have to figure out, okay, I used all my money on 1. How do I get 2? And then 3 is the same thing. But then after 3, it's just the momentum. You just keep going. You've figured out how to kind of like finagle things and find more money. And you've got proof of concept so you can bring partners in. So I love this question. If you're out there and you're like, man, I'm really struggling. I have 1 door. I can't get to the next step. That's so common. It's so common. So you're not alone. But for me, I did that flip. I used a line of credit. And then I used the profits from that flip to buy a triplex. So the triplex I purchased was $78,000, small town Iowa again, right? And I actually ended up having to purchase that in all cash because during the closing process, it was during COVID, so it was really hard to get appraisals and all of that stuff. So the closing date kept getting pushed back, and little old me had already pre-filled the units with tenants. So like I had tenants moving in before we were even scheduled to close. Big no-no. But I was like so excited to like start making money, get tenants in. So I was like, I guess I'm just going to have to buy it in cash. And then once the appraisal can get done, I'll just refinance. And I work with small local lenders. So they have a lot of flexibility there. There's not a seasoning period. I didn't have to hold it for 6 months. It was basically, I closed on the property on October 1st. And on November 1st, I refinanced and basically did a BRRRR. So buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat, which worked really well for me because I was able to do some cosmetic upgrades and things to the property that made it look a lot nicer. So I bought it for 78, but it appraised for 92. So I was able to take out 80% of the $92,000 appraisal. So I really didn't have to put very much money into that deal at all. And then I used that refinance money. I basically recycled that money to turn around and 2 months later purchase a quadplex with it. So like I used the same money for 2 or 3 deals using a BRRRR method. So that's how I was able to scale as quickly as I did.
Wow.
I love the BRRRR method and having that, money recycling and continuously moving. I know the market back then was a little bit different than it is now in terms of interest rates and things like that. Are you still I know you're talking about buying other multifamilies. Are you still using that strategy at all, or?
Yeah. I think the BRRRR strategy is absolutely one of the most powerful strategies out there. It took me, I swear, like I listened to the Bigger Pockets podcast for like a year or two, like while I was doing the flip and maybe a little bit before that, to like fully understand what the BRRRR process was. Because like, remember, I came from the financial independence world where like debt is bad and like, so I was like, okay, so wait a minute. So you're taking this property, then you're refinancing and getting like more debt on the property, and then you're reusing that money to then get more debt on another property. Like I couldn't wrap my head around it. But once I did, I was like, wow, this is so powerful. So if you're a new investor, like if you can educate yourself on how the BRRRR strategy works, I think that's one of the biggest advantages you can have.
Okay. I'm just thinking 78K for a basically turnkey triplex, because it sounds like you put minimal like into rehabbing it. Like I can't even like fathom that.
I know, it's so crazy. Granted, I mean, that property probably cash flows $1,000 a month for me, I would say. But like, again, when we're looking in terms of cash on cash return,
Yeah.
I think my cash on cash return for that property was like 60%, which is just like I made all my money back that I had in it for it back in a year and a half, which is crazy.
Yeah. But I mean, that's still $1,000 more a month that you are making. That I won't say it's passive because it's not. And that's kind of where the book comes in. I don't even know if Nico's ready to go here, but like, because it's not passive because you guys manage your own properties.
Yeah, we do. It isn't passive. One other thing I think that's really important to my journey and like how I was able to quit my job so quickly was because I live very frugally. I at the time had no student loans. I'd paid those off. I had no car loan. I live with my boyfriend, so we split expenses. We don't have kids. We don't have pets. Like I'm not like a big spender. So $1,000 a month, that almost covered all of my like have to have expenses. So I was able to quit very quickly because I was living frugally already.
Did that triplex that you bought, did you end up moving into it, or was it just strictly an investment property?
I've actually never house hacked.
Oh.
Also one of my biggest regrets. So I've only ever purchased properties with 20% down commercial loans or through seller financed loans.
There's still time.
I know. I know, but at this point in my life, I'm almost like I don't know if I could do it. I love living in our single family home.
That's fair. Unless you got like a side by side duplex or something, maybe. Then you share a wall.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
no, the only reason why I asked that is Jessica, my fiance, and I just bought a home in November, and we plan on house hacking it and renting out the basement, where we did a bunch of work to get it ready, its own little unit, its own back entrance. So I'm always curious, and it sounds like you had some money and you were ready to invest in real estate, and you did, the 20% or buying in cash, which probably doesn't seem possible with newbie investors. But if you go to markets that are a little bit priced accordingly, it could be possible, right, Amelia?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had the 60,000 from the flip, and then so I had to come up with 18,000 more. It wasn't that big of a stretch for me at the time, which is how I was able to do that.
So it's really market dependent and
Yeah.
knowing your market, which is great because you knew that market, you lived in there, and you ended up venturing off to Des Moines. But there's a pro to being and investing in your own backyard because you know the agents, you know the contractors, you know what's a good area, what isn't a good area. And that's also important if you're a real estate agent listening. You want to guide your investors to buy in places that you would want to buy. At least that's how I feel. I wouldn't want to bring somebody into a rough neighborhood and then on the resale or something like that, it hurts on the resale. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Yeah. Would you invest in another? Have you ever thought of, or are you at all intrigued in investing outside of your local market?
The only way I would ever go outside of this market is to invest in short-term rentals in places where I would want to visit, which I think is like every investor's dream.
Yeah.
But I don't see any reason to go outside of my market. I don't have shiny object syndrome. I have a good team here. It's super easy. Like, why would I try to go and basically start an all new biz market when I've already got a great one here?
Yeah.
Amelia, you talked about owning single family homes when you started, and now you're doubling down on the multifamily. What is it about that type of property that's attracted to you, and why do you want to continue buying that?
Great question. We actually just did a whole podcast episode on that on the Bigger Pockets Rookie podcast.
Nice.
We've been on there a few times, and that wasn't that long ago. So if you scroll back probably a few episodes, we talk about that. But for me, I find that small multifamily is way less risky in terms of you have multiple rent rolls coming in every month. So if you have a vacancy or one tenant isn't paying rent or whatever, you have those other rents coming in that helps offset your expenses. Whereas obviously with a single family, you've got one tenant paying rent. If they don't pay for the month, that really cuts into your cash flow and you have to cover all those expenses yourself. And if you have a vacancy, again, same situation. It's a lot of times if it's under one roof, there's one, it's one roof expense, it's one driveway expense, it's economies of scale, basically. Like you can get 3 rent rolls coming in for a triplex, but only have the expenses for a single family home.
So what do you categorize for your buy box? What do you consider small multifamily? What number of doors does that range from?
It's anywhere from, I would say, 2 to 8 doors is what I would consider small multifamily. I mean, you could stretch it and say like 10, but I think you're getting more into like mid-size if you want to be technical when you go to like 9 or more units. So
okay. And I ask that because I feel like that's a niche that is overlooked because newer investors, I think, are scared of more doors. So they tend to stay to like duplex, triplex, maybe quad because they want to get the good financing for it. And then bigger investors want the 50 doors, 75 doors. So I feel like there's a niche right there that's like looked over a lot by investors.
Yes, I talk about that a lot. And I was just talking about that with Jessie Dillon, who's in our Wire community. Literally yesterday, she invests in Chicago and she's buying like 8 to 15 unit deals. And she's like, there's such a plethora of those size deals. And I was like, do you think it's because it's too big for the small players and it's too small for the big players, which leaves us what I like to call middle investors. And there's so few of us. So like yes, there's so many opportunities for like that 8 to 15, even like 5 to 15 unit size.
Yeah, because you get over that 4 units where it's no longer a house hack and you have to go for commercial financing. And I think that's what tripped a lot of investors up on the smaller side.
Absolutely.
And now we're going to get into a little bit more of the technical stuff. But before we do, I wanted to get into the conversation of how you met your business partner, Grace, like how that relationship formed, how it developed. And, you both have a similar mindset with how you manage your property. So we'll jump into that. But first, let's hear the story of how you met Grace.
Yeah, so Grace slid into my DMs at the very beginning of 2021 on Instagram.
Does that work?
And basically, it's so crazy to think about because now she's like my best friend and business partner. And I'm like, wow, what if she never would have sent that message? So she sent a message. I scrolled back at one point and like screenshot the very first message. And I think she just says, hey, I saw you have 8 doors and you're another girl in Iowa. Like, nice to meet you. I can't believe there's another younger girl in Iowa doing what I'm doing. Because she was also from Iowa. She lives in Tucson now. So that's how it started. And then we just started talking like every single day. And a few weeks later, she's like, hey, I'm hosting this online meetup for women investors. Do you want to be the first speaker? And I didn't know, but at the time, like that wasn't even a thing. She just made that up. Like she was going to have it, but like it wasn't a thing already. And she told me later she really just wanted to have a chance to pick my brain. So she was like, I'm just going to ask her to come speak at this so I can just pick her brain. We posted about that on our Instagram pages and we had like 35 women which we were like blown away by. We were like going to be happy if our moms showed up and like 3 of our friends, right? And so we were like, wow. I mean, this was during COVID too. Yeah. So like people were still really heavily involved online and looking for things to do. So we were like, wow, this is such a hit. And then from there, we started hosting. Like it went so well. She's like, do you want to make this like a monthly thing? So we started hosting monthly meetups every month for women investors. It was free to attend. We'd bring on guest speakers and pick their brains basically. And that's how Wire was formed. But it was like 2 or 3 years of just us doing like free stuff. But it's been so fun. And that's one distinction to make. And I think you know this, Anna, but Grace and I own separate real estate portfolios. A lot of people think we own our portfolios together. We don't. We're business partners in Wire, and then we also wrote the book together. So own separately, but do have a business together on the side.
Yeah, and it sounds like you guys had very similar mindsets. Obviously, you were both female investors in the same state. And then you guys wrote the self-managing landlord together. So I assume you also had the mindset of like, how can we manage our own properties? Because I feel like a lot of, I'll say, gurus in the real estate investing world say, get a property manager, let someone else handle it. So it's truly passive, even though you end up managing the property manager. Like, was that something that you guys related on right away, that you guys both believed in? How did that like self-managing mindset pop up?
We didn't even know there was another option. We're both from small towns, and there's not property managers where we're at, really. So we were like, I guess our only option is to self-manage. Like, I guess I have to figure out how to be a landlord now. And I think it's the worst piece of advice to tell someone to buy a property and then immediately hand off probably the biggest make or break, like, position in your whole business. Property managers 95% of the time are going to be trash. They're not going to be worth what you're paying them. They don't care about your property, especially if you have a small portfolio, because they're managing portfolios for people that have 200 units. They're going to prioritize those people over you with your single family home. They'll onboard crappy tenants because they get paid usually a fee to onboard tenants. So they want to make sure that they're getting tenants in as quickly as possible. They aren't going to prioritize maintenance requests. It's just a whole deal. So like, and for us, we wanted to keep as much cash flow in our pocket as possible because our end goal was to be able to quit our full-time jobs as quickly as possible. So all of that together, we were just like, well, I guess we're self-managers.
That's amazing. You basically, it's like that limiting, like if you know something exists, you limit yourself to that belief. But like you guys didn't know about property managers because it wasn't a thing. So it wasn't in your brain that you couldn't do it because you didn't know.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. Like people are like, well, how'd you learn how to be a landlord? And I'm like, that was my only option. Like what else was I going to do? Just let my property go to shit? Like I just had to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how I felt when I got my first investment property in 2023. I kind of just First of all, I stumbled on the deal. And second of all, I didn't know that there was property managers that could just take over. So I kind of learned, and my systems have changed since, obviously through trial and error, but also reading that book that Anna has, Self-Managing Landlord. So many great tips. So obviously, if you're in the industry and you're a landlord and you're curious about learning about systems, it came out, I want to say last year, Amelia, or 2 years ago.
It came, April of 2024.
Yeah, and it talks
about almost a year ago already.
Almost a year ago, yeah. But it talks about there's technology and things that you could use. It's not like you going to pick up a check every day and you personally going out to fix toilets. I know that that's something that a lot of people think when you become a landlord, you're in charge of all this. But do you mind talking about like how you implement systems to help you as a self-managing landlord?
Yeah. This book, truly, I think it's like, I don't even know, $16 to maybe $20. If you are thinking about being a self-managing landlord, or maybe you already even are and you're like, I need to get better at this, it's the cheapest investment that you can make to get your ROI. And I'm not just saying that because I wrote it. I probably make 10 cents off of each sale of the book. I'm not even kidding. So like, I'm not saying that to just, make money. It truly is a great book. But in terms of systems and processes, everyone thinks that I think everyone has a mom and pop mindset around being a landlord. They think that, like it's on an Excel sheet or it's in my head or I have to take checks from my tenants, and they don't realize there's a really good way to be a self-managing landlord that requires really low level of time invested. And so, using a really powerful property management software, believe it or not, I still talk to landlords my age that are technologically savvy who have 5 to 10 units that aren't using a property management software. So like, it's not that strange of a thing to come across that. So having your SOPs documented, which are your standard operating procedures, and then following them, having rules for your tenants, having business hours where you're able to be contacted, like all of those things. I could talk so long about it. It's all included in the book, but like just know you don't have to operate on this like winging it, just mom and pop mindset as a landlord. There's a way to still do it and be a great small business and not feel like you're this corporate entity that, has to do everything a certain way.
Yeah. I feel like you guys filled the niche that was, I didn't even know. I saw your book come out. I'll be honest. I was like, oh, I don't want to manage my own properties. I didn't look at it. And then I heard you guys speak at Bigger Pockets conference. And I was like, holy crap, this is different. Like, you guys filled a niche where I felt like I've never heard anyone speak about managing properties to the depth that you guys have and the systems and processes that you have. Coming from a government employee background, I love SOPs. I was like, I know what that means. I love SOPs. And I picked up the book immediately. And then I subsequently joined the community because I was like, this is something I can do. And I read the book, and clearly I have all this stuff marked off. So I didn't write the book, and I make not even 10 cents off of it. I highly recommend it. But I will ask, and this is a personal question too that I should ask in the community. But so you live in town, but like my properties are not in town. There's a lot of great systems here for that. But what are your tips for finding, I'll say, like boots on the ground? Like, my biggest hang up has been finding, I'll say, that task rabbit to go walk the property or pick up the keys. Like, how do you find those people, especially if you're not right there?
Really good question. I think this is such a common issue that people who are out-of-state investors face. There's a couple ways I would highly recommend. One, you're already in the Wire community, and it's smaller right now, but like as we continue to grow, I think there'll be more people in different markets that you can use as a resource. We also have the free Facebook group, but the Bigger Pockets community, Coach Chad Carson's just those communities where those investors are, especially newer, like really eager investors who are like, I really want to learn the ropes and I want to maybe make a little bit of money while I'm doing it. That's such a good place to find a boots on the ground person, because they're interested in real estate. So they've got probably some basics of what it's going to require down, and they're going to be excited and eager to like do the thing.
I love that. Okay. I need to find one of those.
What market would you be looking in for that?
So we have Southern Virginia, which is Danville, and then the other one is Akron, Ohio. And so like handymen, things like that, I could find just because I have apps for that. But it was those little things that's like not a full-time job, but it's all the little things that property managers do that most don't, like walking the property once a quarter or picking up keys, because some of our units don't have keypads because that's not a thing there.
Oh, here's another really good one. What about, if your agent's a realtor in that area?
I tried him.
That you pay a flat fee.
I tried him, but he's also an investor. I tried that. I got that actually tip from another Wire member, and he's just so busy with his own investments. He produces a lot more in that area and works with investors. And so I asked him, he's like, yeah, let me ask around and see if I can find someone else that maybe is interested in that job. So he's great as an investor friendly agent. He's at a different level in his career. So he's like,
yeah. Find a different new agent that doesn't have a book of business already.
Good. That's a good tip. So agents and investors that are newer to the game that maybe want to learn, and you can take them under your wing and get them to do some work for you for a fee. I like it.
Absolutely.
I dig it.
So Amelia, we touched about the Wire community and the origins. I met you and I met Grace in 2023 at BPCon, and it was really cool to see your guys' journey through, your podcast and eventually what came about as the Wire community. You mind talking about like what the Wire community is now and how you're helping women invest in real estate, which is fantastic. I'm pro women invest in real estate.
Yeah, you're double teamed on this podcast.
Yeah, right
now. So Wire, again, Women Invest in Real Estate. Our mission at Wire is to help women become W-2 optional through real estate so they can live a life of their own creation. Grace and I both very much of the opinion that there's so much more to life than working for someone else for the rest of your life. And so many of the women in the community echo that. Anna, you're in there. There's just people, and it's so invigorating to also be around people who think that way, because we get enough of, in the real world, right? people who just work a 9 to 5 for their whole lives until they're 65. And it's really hard to find people with other mindsets, which is how Wire was kind of created, like was just out of a selfish desire by me and Grace to have other women around us that have the same mindset, that think the same way as we do, that are down to earth, that are cool, that are fun to hang out with. Like, we don't want to be on the level of the gurus who are so unrelatable that it's like, I don't have anything in common with you because you make $5 million a year and you're not even doing real estate anymore. You just make $5 million a year
Coaching.
selling $20,000 mentorships. Right. So like, we just wanted to create this really down to earth community. We did I'm just going to pat ourselves on the back here. And Anna, you're one of these people. Like, we did such a good job of attracting women who are doing deals. They're real women. They're doing real deals. It's not all beginners who've never done a deal before. So it's great because we can have really in-depth conversations and people have lots of things to share because they have experience. So I'm really passionate about it. Sorry, I went on for a little bit there, but it's just really important to have representation of women in the space because and women that are younger than 65 that haven't already made it, right? So yes, the Wire community, I think it's one of the best out there. If you haven't heard of us, definitely check us out.
We just talked about this earlier, Ann and I, when we were chatting, and the conversation of, getting from 0 to 1 is completely different from somebody that's already in the business. Anna has 8 rental units and you have a good amount of rental units. It's a whole different conversation because you can talk about what's working, what isn't working, how did you fund your last deal? We have the privilege of being in a few different communities. We also host local meetups where there are the newbies that are looking to get to one, and we love helping people get to their first rental, but it's a different conversation that you're having when you're working with people. So I think that's cool. I love watching you guys grow. I'm an avid listener to the Wire podcast. So if you don't listen to that, make sure
you're one of the 20% of men followers or men listeners that we have. I love that.
That's me. Look at me. I'm wearing pink. I didn't even plan this.
Yeah, that's awesome. I will say the Wire community does have a component for those that are listening that are female investors, because I will say most of the gurus are men. So it is good to have females and realize, oh crap, women can do this too. But there is a beginner group, cohort, what do we call them? Pods. I'm getting all my terms confused, but we have our groups, our specialties, and there is a beginner one. So you do make space for those people that maybe haven't made their first deal. They know enough about real estate to speak the lingo, but so it is open to even like newer investing females that are interested in joining a community. I want to put that out there.
That's a great, absolutely 100%. That cohort, the beginner cohort, it's for those women who are ready to make moves. They just need a little guidance. They, like you said, they know the basics. They're like, I get it. I just need help getting over that hump and purchasing my first property.
And last thing about the community, you guys set up some kick-ass retreats, some events. And I know we just talked about this off camera, but I know you have one coming up and one in the works. You mind talking about those?
Yes, these retreats, again, super passionate about them. They're so fun. I just calculated, and I think we have like 25% of people return, which to me, I'm like, wow, 25%. We've hosted our 9th retreat is happening next week. And so the fact that 25% of the women continue to come back, that speaks volumes. They're just so much fun. We have one next week in Phoenix, and then we have one again in September. That's a secret location still. Dates are still secret. But it's super, super just invigorating to be in a room with 20 women who are all doing what you're doing, and you can talk the talk and dream and just do all the amazing things while also having such a fun time while you're doing it. So our retreats are turning into member only, so you do have to be a member of the Wire community. But we keep it priced, so it's a no-brainer price to join the community for a year. And we're just excited to keep fostering those relationships within the community and at our retreats. So again, I'm sure our website will be in the show notes, but we'd love for you to come and check us out.
For sure. And we are running close on time, so we wanted to hit you with a few final questions before we let you go. First of all, thank you again. This has been super awesome. I've learned a ton. But we talked a lot about real estate, and wanted to know, is there any like non-real estate hobbies that you have? I think I saw on social media, Amelia shooting some basketball. So I wanted to
Oh, yeah.
see what you got going on outside of the real estate world.
I always joke that I have way too many hobbies to not be self-employed. I'm an Enneagram 7. If you're into the Enneagrams, I'm basically always down for something fun. I love playing pickleball. I love golfing. I've always been a sports girly, so I'm very competitive. Anything that involves competition, I'm in. I love games. I love reading. I love craft beer. I love everything. I truly love learning. I love exploring the world. So I do have many, many hobbies that I enjoy.
Nice. What about what would you say is the best advice you've ever gotten? And it doesn't have to be real estate related.
That's a hard question. Honestly, I don't know if this is a piece of advice, but I just always remember my parents growing up. And again, I don't have kids, but I would love to be a parent like my parents were. And just they were so encouraging and so good at unconditional love that I always knew I'd have a safe space to land. And I always remember my parents telling me, and this is so cheesy, but they would always tell me, like, you literally can do anything that you want in life. Like, and I think that has played a huge role in the fact that I'm an entrepreneur today, because I never doubted that I could succeed at anything that I chose to do. And I think that's because my parents constantly would tell me that as I was growing up.
Awesome. And then our last question, how can we, Anna and I and our audience help grow your business in the future?
Ooh, that's tough, because I feel like entrepreneurs have a hard time asking for help, right?
Yeah.
I think just being champions for the wire community, that's the biggest thing. I think we would love to keep getting our name out there. So you guys have done a great job of that on this podcast. We talked about that quite a bit, but any women investors that that you come across, if they haven't heard about us, just sharing about us means so much to us.
Yeah. And they give a ton out for free through their podcast. If you're on Spotify or YouTube or wherever, check them out. Just, I find it, and I'm not a woman investing in real estate, but I find all of it really, really good. And Grace and Amelia are really, really personable. They give personal stories. They share about not only the successes, but like, some hardships that they're going through, which is, that's the main reason why Anna and I started ours, is to kind of just talk about everything, be authentic with the audience. So thank you again, Amelia. How can people reach out to you and learn a little bit more about you?
Yeah, I'm active on Instagram at Amelia Jo REI. Fun fact, Grace used to think my last name was Joe for the longest time, but my first name's Amelia, my middle name's Joe, and then REI.
Yeah.
And then womeninvestinrealestate.com is our website, or wire with 2eyes.community. And then, yes, we have a podcast. We have so many freebies on our website. So definitely poke around there and come check us out.
Yeah. We'll make sure to put everything in the show notes, but that's going to do it for another episode of the Agent to Investor podcast. Please like, share, subscribe if you found any value. You can reach out to me at N Garcia Official on all social platforms, and you can reach out to Anna at
I'm Anna Bialik _realtor on Instagram, and just Anna Bialik everywhere else. And I'm going to do another plug for Wire. There is free masterminds that they do sometimes. I know that there's one coming up. I don't know if it's going to come like timing wise, but if you follow them on Instagram, there's also a Wire account on Instagram that you can follow. And you can get on the wait list for the Wire community, because you guys don't just open the doors and let everyone come in and like flood the space. You are very intentional about how many people come in and dealing with them. But there is a wait list, and there is a chance coming up to join.
There you go.
Yes,
Great
there
plug.
is. Doors open again at the end of March. Thank you for including that, Anna.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you again, Amelia, and tune in until the next episode.
Bye.